Hey, everybody. Welcome to another episode of Blue Collar Real Estate. I'm Greg Mayo.
And I'm Ryan Herget. And Greg's not feeling so well today, so I'm going to bring a little extra energy for us both.
I appreciate that. You got all your chakras aligned, so we should be good.
I did a little acupuncture this week. I must say, I vote yes to that for anybody that's never experienced that. It's pretty awesome.
Well, I had one acupuncture down in Mexico from Dr. Juan in my right buttocks.
It didn't go as well, it seems as though.
I would not recommend that, no.
What are we working on today, man? It's been a good week since we've sat down and talked to everybody, and we've had a few questions come in over the last few weeks, and so bring us up to speed. What are we doing, man?
Well, I kind of thought we would take this episode and just kind of answer some of the questions we've been getting.
Yeah.
Because they're good questions. We appreciate you guys reaching out with your questions and with your ideas and things you want to know about. We certainly try to comprehensively cover everything in each episode, but we miss stuff.
A little bit. Maybe more than a little bit from time to time.
And sometimes the delivery might be a little convoluted, but
got to have fun, right?
But so I thought we'd answer some questions and just kind of make that connection with folks and see what we can do.
No doubt. We've got a lot of questions really just based around not only the process of buying and selling homes and maybe part of the mortgage process, but also a lot of questions from people about the real estate industry. And so we're going to kind of dive into both of those, talking to people about, okay, what are some of the questions or most common questions that we've gotten since we've been doing the show, based around, okay, how do you go about buying and selling a home? We've talked about that on a lot of our episodes. But then we're also going to dive into some of the questions people have had about maybe getting into the industry. And, I know everybody likes to watch HGTV. And in fact, one of our questions comes from an HGTV-inspired question. So we're going to dive into that a little bit today, too. But before we do, what else is new? I know Stacy Mayo with Ruoff has come on board to help sponsor the show and provide some really good, just feedback for the show and a lot of good insight because mortgage rates have just tanked in the last couple of weeks. And I know she's been slammed with refinances right now.
Yep.
There's just a lot going on from a mortgage industry standpoint, too.
And I tell you what, no matter what is thrown on Stacy and the Scott Miller team, they just find a way to make it happen. They find a way to get it done. Yeah. It's so cool. And I want to say something, a sidebar about Ruoff in general. Mm-hmm. We just got back from Mexico, and it was a Ruoff trip that we were able to go on to thanks to Scott Miller. So, Scott, if you're watching, thanks, dude. And even though I got sick on the trip, and I'm still fighting that cold.
Oh, Juan, he didn't do you any favors, it doesn't sound like.
It still was a great trip. And the one thing I want to say, beyond my wife working for the company and beyond them being sponsors and whatever, Ruoff from top to bottom, from Mark Music all the way down, is just a quality group of people.
Class act people.
I was thinking when I was sitting down there on Saturday morning about that, I think it's Richard Branson quote, and I don't remember the exact quote, but basically the idea was, I don't take care of my customers. I take care of my employees, and they take care of my customers.
Yep.
And that seems to be the philosophy at Ruoff from the top down.
Agreed. No, and again, I've got a long working history with them as well, with a couple different people at that company, and I can absolutely say that and attest to that 1,000%. And I've had the opportunity to meet Mark a couple of different times as well, and again, just they epitomize class, and those are the people you want to work with.
And I gotta tell you a funny story, and I won't say which Ruoff person it was in case he doesn't want me to, but it was one of the higher ups. Mm-hmm. I'd never met him before. So Thursday, we're all there, we're all around the pool at the resort, and I was talking to a couple people from Stacy's office, and this guy walks up, sunglasses on, whatever, and he introduces himself. And I said, "Oh, are you fairly new with Ruoff?" He said, "Well, fairly." And I said, "I tell you what, dude, and this is just from my perspective, but you've landed at the right company." And so I start selling this guy on how cool Ruoff is, right? Well, I found out he was one of the executives for the company.
That's awesome.
But he never mentioned it to me. He just stood there and went, "Oh, yeah, that's cool, thanks." So I saw him the next night at dinner, and I'm like, "Dude, didn't know that was you."
I know you.
And we laughed and had a good cut up about it. But I guess my point with that too is he's just walking around like a regular dude.
That's what
it's just a cool company, man. I was so excited to be able to be a part of their trip and to hang out with some of them. Wish I would have felt better. Wish I would have played golf on that beautiful course, even though my handicap's about 70. And no, that doesn't mean I shoot par. No, I understand. My handicap is 70, but.
So let's dive in a little bit because we've got a lot to get to here today with some different questions. And we kind of went through and we pulled out 8 or 9 of probably the most common questions that we've gotten. And let's just kind of dive into that first. The first one actually came from Todd in Cloverdale, Indiana. And this is probably a question I get asked at least 2 or 3 times a week. And there's such a misconception from people that maybe haven't bought a home before, or maybe if you've not bought a home in the last maybe 15 or 20 years, things have simply changed.
Oh, yeah.
It's not been what it once was. And Todd's question was that, his parents told him that he needed to save 20% down payment in order to buy a house for 2 purposes, because A, he thought he needed 20% down to buy a house. But then secondly, he's like, I don't want to pay mortgage insurance. Well, let's kind of dissect that question, because there's really 2 different parts to it. And, the first part of that is you 100% do not need 20% down. I don't know which camera I'm looking at here. You do not need 20% down to buy a house. In fact, there are loan programs all across the board, and there's 6 of them I can think of right off the top of my head. There are no money down loans.
Yep.
Okay. Those may not be the very best loans based on your situation, but they do exist, whether it's a first-time homebuyer grant program, okay, whether it's a VA loan, whether it's in Indiana, we have a program called the Next Home Loan, which is available to anybody that has not owned a home in the last 3 years. So there's so many different options to get into a home for no money down. We won't get into the nitty-gritty of that, but you don't need 20% down to buy a house. And believe it or not, every $1,000 you put down on a house is not going to have that big of an impact on your monthly payment.
What is it, like $8 or something?
Even less than that. I think it's, with interest rates being as cheap as they are right now. I mean, today, the rate sheet I actually saw from Scott yesterday, the 30-year fixed rate was 3.5%. That's no points.
Wow.
Nothing, just 3.5% 30-year fixed rate. Well, at that interest rate, your monthly payment for every $1,000 you put down is only going to decrease about $5 a month.
Wow.
Think about that. So if you have to save $40,000 to put down, I'm pretty bad at math, but that's only going to drop your payment maybe $200. Okay, and while I'm not certainly degrading that, $200 is a lot of money, but how long does it take you to save $40,000 relative to just $200 a month in that example? So it's absolutely not the case that you need 20% to put down. And the other misconception about this that I want to dive into is this element of private mortgage insurance. Okay. A lot of people found, and I know the mortgage industry went through a massive, massive change back in 2008 and 9 after it was just kind of the Wild West for about 10 years leading up to that. I was part of a lot of that, and I saw a lot of crazy things happen. But for those that don't know, private mortgage insurance is insurance to the lender in case of default on the loan. Okay, so if something should happen and you're unable to make your payments, or you just say, oh, I gave that house back. Well, it doesn't quite work that way. Private mortgage insurance is there to make the lender whole, basically. So it covers the 20% that you didn't put down. So that way, if they have to take the home back and they have to resell it, they're actually getting made whole, in some cases more than twice. So that's what it's for. However, it's kind of a necessary evil. But here's the cool part. You can get around that. There's 2 different ways you can get around that. And again, we won't get into the nitty-gritty of this, but you can do something called lender-paid mortgage insurance, which is a fancy way of saying you can take about 0.25% higher on your interest rate, which is all tax deductible, by the way, and not have to pay this mortgage insurance. So it's an easier way to reduce your monthly payment, and you have to have a little bit better credit to do that, usually around 680 or above credit score. But it's a way to reduce your monthly payment, write it all off, because in a lot of cases, private mortgage insurance, to my knowledge, and I am not a CPA, is not always tax deductible as mortgage interest is. So it's a way to reduce your monthly payment, not have to save this gargantuan down payment, and get into a home for a lower down payment, making homeownership infinitely easier.
Yeah, and there's other stuff you can do too. Let's say you end up with a loan program and you got PMI, and you do some improvements to the house. You can have it reappraised.
Absolutely.
And when you get to that 80-20 loan to value, right, you can refinance and put more money down later.
You got it.
And finance out of that. So, yeah, there are a lot of options. To answer Todd's question, no. In a word, you don't have to put 20% down to buy a house.
You absolutely do not. And, to your point, and I appreciate you bringing that up because I didn't even think of that off the top of my head here. But, when you're in a market right now, we're on about a 7-8 year swing here in central Indiana of home values going up at a pretty rapid rate. Simply if your home's going up in value about 8-9% a year, you can refinance that thing in 2 or 3 years and get rid of your mortgage insurance because of the equity you've gained.
And, dude, a client I sold the townhouse to downtown, not wholesale district downtown, but in the downtown area, just under 2 years ago. She called me, said she's moving, wants to sell it. I went and pulled comps on it. She put hardwood floors in instead of carpet, but that's it. She hadn't done a ridiculous amount of upgrades
Yeah,
or
a few
anything like that.
$1,000, yeah.
I went ahead and pulled comps. Her value has gone up 22%.
That's insane. That's
in
insane.
2 years.
Just that's basically 11% growth year over year for 2 years. That's awesome. I love hearing stories like that. So I hope that answers Todd's question. I know there's a ton of people out there that have that question around down payment. And again, you do not need to save 20% down. If you have it, by all means, go ahead and put it down. I'm not discouraging that at all, but it's not an absolute requirement when you're buying a house. So, which kind of brings us to the next one, and this is another major hurdle for a lot of people, at least that I personally work with, and I get this question so much. But Antoine here in Indianapolis as well, he was asking, do you have to have A1 credit? Now, again, I don't know what the exact technical term for A1 credit is, but do you have to have great credit in order to buy a house? So, Greg, why don't you dive into that first, because I know that this is something that you're pretty familiar with. I know Stacy helps a lot of people out with as well. So let's talk about credit and how it impacts your ability to buy a house in a nutshell here.
Well, the answer in a word for Antoine is, again, no.
No.
You don't have to have A1 credit, whatever that is. But here's the thing about credit. And I always tell people, and in some of the areas that I get new people, new clients and so forth out of, they may have some questionable credit issues they need to work through.
Sure.
So the first thing we do is we get Stacy to pull a credit report.
Mm-hmm.
Now, there's a couple reasons for that. Number one, we can see where you're at, right?
Yeah. It's hard to know what you're going to get without, I'm sorry, I didn't mean to interrupt you, but it's hard to know what you can do without knowing where you're at today.
Right.
So that's the first step, is just simply looking at the credit report. So
now the second thing, the second benefit of that is of having your credit report pulled. If there's some opportunities, some things that need to be worked on, Stacy has all that software, and other lenders do too. Don't get me wrong, but I am plugging. I am doing what I do, but that software exists to run credit simulators that will tell you, okay, if I pay this down or off,
Yep.
that'll do what to my score. We have a client we're working on together right now that we're probably 60 days out if they follow the steps she's given them. But you get that credit report pulled with a mortgage company, and they make it so easy.
Yeah.
Like, look, here's step 1 through 7. Do this, and we're good to go.
I always like to say it's kind of like a roadmap, right? Okay, in order to get to where you want to be, you've got to have a map or a GPS that tells you how to get there. Well, credit's no different,
right?
Okay, and if you're buying a house, I mean, you can get a house. I've helped people many a time here in the last year with credit scores as low as 580. Okay, and you can get a house for 3.5% down with a 580 or above credit score. It's not always the best interest rate, but it's a hell of a lot better than paying rent still. But nevertheless, credit kind of works in tiers. You know, between that 580 and 620 mark, you do have some loan options available, but you're maybe going to pay a touch higher interest rate, maybe 0.5% higher on your interest rate to get that. But again, you're not paying rent. You're building equity. And when homes are going up 10 or 11% a year, like you just said, man, it's a hell of a lot better than paying $400 more in rent for that same house,
right?
Than it is to just say, I'm going to keep renting for a while and see what happens here. So, but starting around 580, you do have loan options to get into a house, and those are good loan options, not bad loans, and then it kind of goes up from there, but if you get over a 680 to 720, now all of a sudden you qualify for most of the best loan programs out there. I always like to use the analogy, when you're watching, a commercial and you see those car ads for like 0% interest for 72 months, no money down. And then this much fine print, 3 paragraphs of fine print there.
Right.
Well, that fine print simply says you have to have good credit. In order to qualify for that program, you have to have good credit. And good credit generally falls at 680 and above, specifically in the home loan lending industry. So those are some different things to consider. But I want to share a quick story for Antoine here, because I use that credit simulator so much. There's a couple different ones out there, but Credit Wizard's a big one as well. And I was working with a young first-time home buyer. This is about 6 months ago now. So this is late fall of last year, and we just closed on her house last month. And here's what was so cool is when we first started the process, she was at a 627 credit score. Okay, so she was good to go. We could have done it right there, but she wanted to get a little bit better loan. Mm-hmm. And in fact, in her case, she wanted to get a no money down loan, which for the program she needed in the area she wanted to live in, we needed to get to a 660. Okay, so we uploaded her credit report into this Credit Wizard real quick, and it was going to take 2 months. It was going to take us 2 months if she paid down 2 credit cards to under 30% of the credit limit. Okay, so she's going to have to pay down about $900 worth of credit cards, but if she did that over a 60-day period, her credit score was going to jump over 70 points because she just simply had some maxed out credit cards.
Yeah.
So we paid those down. Her credit score went up 69 points. So that credit wizard was 2 points away from the reality when she just did what it said. So they're so spot on, and it doesn't cost you any money to do this. So I want to encourage people, if maybe you've had something in the past you're not quite sure, don't wait till your lease is up, or don't wait till you have to make a decision in order to look at that, because it's free to find out. And they can literally build a roadmap for you for exactly what you need to do to get the very best loan program for you. So again, going back to your original answer, you do not have to have perfect credit to get a home. But even if you do want to just work on getting your score up, it's not a difficult process. You just need to know what steps to take and when to take them.
And a bit of encouragement for Antoine or anybody else listening that had the same question. You're not stuck.
Yeah.
There are steps, and there are options, and there are ways to get into a mortgage program. We're not talking about Louis the Loan Shark down on 10th Street.
Exactly.
Or some rent-to-buy program, which I'm trying to help a couple get out of right now. There are options, and there are steps, and it seems like it's a sort of great abyss of unknown, but the right lender can walk you through the steps, and you will get a house.
Yeah.
You just follow the steps.
That's it. I mean, everybody can qualify to buy a house. It just may not be today, but it doesn't have to be 6 years from now. It doesn't have to be when you save $50,000. It's just, again, talking to somebody like Stacy or any other credible lender out there that knows what they're doing, that can help you build a plan and realize your goal there.
Yep.
So hopefully that helps on that one. I want to pick your brain on this next one here, because Kevin from Gary, Indiana, had a question around construction. We talk a lot about construction on this show, right? But he was saying, my dad and I own a construction company. I've been helping him redo homes for years. My realtor here is telling me that I have to hire a home inspector to do my inspection. Why can't I do it myself? I'm going to let you take that one.
First of all, I got to get the song out of my head. Gary, Indiana, Gary, Indiana. Everybody. Hey, Austin's with us. Anyway, so Kevin, let me take it this way with you. I used to be a remodeling contractor, and I used to own a home inspection business. So I've done both. The next house we buy, I'm going to hire an inspector. Mm-hmm. Now, number one is from a logical standpoint. We'll get into the legality thing in a minute. From a logical standpoint, you've got emotion wrapped up into the house you're getting ready to buy.
Yeah.
You're not only that, but you're also thinking about where to put the furniture, picking drapes, I don't know, whatever you're doing with you and your significant other if you have one. So you're not focused on the minutia of the inspection from an impartial, non-connected emotionally standpoint.
Yep.
The other thing is, if you're not a licensed home inspector, that home inspector, literally that's his job. I can tell you from experience, the class you go through and the testing you have to go through to become an inspector is mind-numbing. Mm-hmm. No matter how much experience you have with houses, you still want that guy doing it, or gal. And then the other thing is, from a legality standpoint. Now, I can walk through a house as a buyer, and I can pick apart 100 things. Yep. You and I have done it several times on properties. I can't take my findings, no matter what my personal experience is, put those on an inspection response and send it back to the listing agent and say, this is what we want fixed.
Yep.
Because I'm not a licensed home inspector.
Yeah, and the way our contract, and this may be different from state to state, but here in Indiana is where, both you and I work every day, and our contract simply states that if you want to ask a seller to take care of anything that comes up in an inspection, you have to hire a licensed and qualified home inspector to do that inspection. You can't hire Joe the roofer. You can't hire, anybody that's not a, licensed qualified home inspector, because it's not going to mean anything.
Right.
And the seller's just going to say, well, maybe you did redo a couple houses 5 years ago, but that doesn't mean you know what you're doing. You and I were just having the conversation about, all of the, people that are redoing homes in downtown Indianapolis right now, and some of the less than stellar work that you see frequently down there. So, just because it's been done doesn't mean that it's right. And that's where you have to bring in a licensed qualified home inspector to do that inspection, because if you want to ask the seller to fix anything, your opinion or your dad's opinion, unfortunately, don't carry as much weight as that licensed qualified home inspector.
Right.
So what else? What else do we have coming up here, Greg?
So this one you'll find awesome. Daryl in Columbus. This is great. You ready?
This is my favorite topic.
My wife watches HGTV every night. Of course she does, Daryl, and there's support groups for that now. But anyway, and I keep telling her she would be great at showing homes because she has so many friends and she loves looking at houses. Daryl's question is this: how does she get started in real estate?
Well, perfect. So, I want to kind of unbox that question a little bit there, because there's a few components there. So, I hear this a lot. I've personally, brought into the business over 150 people into the real estate world over my 18 years. So I've been around this a lot. I've sat across the desk from a lot of people that are like, oh, I'm a great people person and I love showing homes. Well, while I will say that showing homes is definitely an important part of the business, and having some people skills is critical in this business, it is about, what would you say, Greg, maybe 5% of the business is showing homes and doing what they do on HGTV.
Yep.
HGTV absolutely loves, I'm going to look into whichever camera we've got here, HGTV loves to show off the sexy part of the business. They like to show off the drama of the business. They don't show off the reality of the business. Okay, in this business, okay, your job is not just showing homes. That's maybe 5% of what you do. The rest of it is being an emotional therapist. It is negotiating deals. It is dealing with the other agent and helping make sure things stay together. Hell, I was helping somebody fix a roof the other day, because that's the stuff you have to do in order to help navigate people through the process of buying and selling a home. Real estate is a very expensive, it's an emotional, and it's a very infrequent purchase for people. And when you combine those, that trifecta, expensive, emotional, and infrequent, man, there's a lot of moving parts, and you have to be able to help navigate that. And showing homes is what I do. I show probably about 40 homes a week on average. Okay, but that's a very small part of what I do. It's managing the process from start to finish for people. Answering questions like what we're talking about right here for people is a big part of what you do. So while HGTV, while I get it and I understand its popularity, it is not fully demonstrating what this job actually is as being a real estate professional. So again, while it's okay, it's not the end all be all of what you're going to experience. So back to the second part of that question is, how do you get started? You just have to simply contact your state and find out what are the requirements for being licensed. Every state is different. Okay, my wife is getting licensed in California right now, and that licensing criteria is way different than what we have to go through here in Indiana. So you have to contact your state, find out what those licensing requirements are. I can tell you here in Indiana, you have to, and you can do this online, or you can go to a class. You can do it in 2 weeks or 8 weeks, whichever you prefer, have time for. But you have to go in and get 90 hours of pre-licensing. Okay, 90 hours of educating yourself on all of the finite details, most of which don't necessarily directly apply to selling real estate, but it's there to help you not get sued. Right. It's there to help make sure that you know what the ethical requirements are of being a real estate agent. So you have to contact your state, find out what the licensing requirements are, and I would say go talk to 5 or 6 different real estate brokers and understand what are the differences in brokerages. Because while you could go to a Keller Williams, you could go to an EXP, you could go to a Century 21, you're going to have a very different experience amongst all of those different brokerages, because it's about the people that you surround yourself with. So that's the other thing, is once you find out what the licensing requirements are, and once you pass the estate exam, and every state has one, go talk to some different brokers. Understand how this business works, because again, it's not what you see on HGTV.
Well, and I tell new people, new agents, whatever, you go get your license and take the class to learn the legal stuff. Then you got to learn how to sell real estate.
Yeah, then you have to learn the business of real estate.
And what you're going to find out when you get into that process, just like you're saying, every brokerage is different. Every part of town's different. Absolutely. And you got to find people to work with that jibe with how you work, how you think, how you see the world, whatever. I'm now a certified mentor for EXP. Mm-hmm. And so that's part of what I do now, is help new agents sort of navigate the process, especially with us being a cloud-based brokerage. It takes a lot of self-determination.
Self-discipline to do it, no doubt.
And, of course, you're now an Icon agent.
Yeah. I got that last month or something like that ago. So,
which is boss. If you guys don't know about EXP, you EXP people out there, Icon right here.
Super
and
famous.
I get to look at that.
Super
I can
famous.
touch his shoulder.
I'm joking.
Anyway, but yeah. So to Daryl's saying, your wife may be great at it, but again, 5% of it is what she sees on HGTV and thinks she'd dig.
Yeah. And again, I cannot say this enough. There are so many amazing brokerages out there. Greg and I are both with EXP, and we're super thankful and happy to be a part of it. But there's so many great brokerages out there, and this business is all around understanding not just what a commission split is, but it's understanding what kind of guidance leadership is going to be there to help you get your business up to speed. Because the number one thing that if you're going into this business of real estate, you are an entrepreneur. You are now a business owner. When I do real estate training for people, I always give people the book, the E-Myth Revisited. If you've not read that book, go read it, because it shares why 85% of the people that get into this business are no longer in the business 3 years later. This business has an incredibly high turnover rate because people are uninformed of what being a real estate agent actually is.
Mm-hmm.
It is being a business owner, and there's a lot more that goes into that than just simply showing homes.
Yep.
So,
Amen.
anyway, moving on. So the next one we have Lance from Sutherland, Alabama wrote in, and he said, I'm under contract with an agent to sell my house, and I don't feel like she's doing anything to actually help me sell the place, but she's been under contract for 4 months. Can I fire this agent? If so, how? I'm first going to say that, we are not qualified to answer that question for the state of Alabama. I don't know what their license laws are, but we can certainly provide some perspective on that.
No, but what I think is interesting about this is what we do, what you and I do in our listing presentation. In 3 different spots, we tell a potential listing client, here's how you fire us if we're not doing our job.
Absolutely. Absolutely. I always like to tell people, it's like, if I'm not doing the job that you are paying me to do, then absolutely you should fire me. And I'm going to give you the right to do that. If I'm not doing everything I promise you that you're paying me to do, then absolutely fire me, because I'm not going to hold you to a contract just because the contract says you have to. I personally believe business has to be win-win in every single facet that you choose to do it in. And if it's no longer a good fit, it's time to move on and help that customer accomplish their goal to the best of their ability, whether that's with me, which I hope it is. But if it's not, that's cool too. I'm going to help you accomplish your goal. If that means I have to, get fired and give you everything I've done, I will do that. Never had that happen. Knock on wood right there. But nevertheless, I can't speak to Alabama's license laws, but what I would encourage you to do, Lance, is have a real conversation with her. Okay. And a lot of real estate agents, again, going back to the last question we talked about, this is a business. Okay. And it's not just showing homes. And a lot of agents don't, unfortunately, maybe either haven't had the training or the discipline to run their business as a business and set those expectations super, super clearly up front. So that way, what you're paying me to do. If there's not 8 people, and I'm going to use this as an example, I've got a house in Pike Township today that just went on the market. Well, according to where it's priced at, we should have 8 people every single week looking at this home. And if we're not hitting that number, I take that upon myself, because I'm not doing my job in that case. It's my job to price it right. It's my job to market it the right way, get that home in front of as many people, but I can't control what those people are going to do once they see it. But from there, once they do come in, it's my job to then get you the feedback so we can make educated decisions on what we need to do moving forward to, again, help you get the home sold for the best price for you in the shortest amount of time possible.
Right. And so, Lance, we don't know about Alabama, like Ryan said, but I would encourage you to have that hard conversation with your agent right now.
Yeah. Before it gets worse.
Yeah. Because at the end of the day, you hired them to sell your house. And if that's not happening, you need to figure out why.
Yeah.
Next one I want to move on to is Tommy in Indy. Mm-hmm. He says, here's one for you. And I want to ask you this, because we covered this on like episode 3 or 4, and you got all charged up, so I want you to answer this. How many homes should I look at before I buy one? Is there a set number you work off of, or does it vary?
I love that question. I tell everybody this when I sit down with somebody for the first time and we're getting out, and I tell people as well, look, we're not going to go out and look at 40 homes, right? There's no reason to in today's world. Now, 20 years ago, maybe that was the case, because 20 years ago, let's think about what's changed in the business of real estate in the last 15 years, 20 years specifically. If you bought a home prior to 2005, what didn't exist prior to 2005 very predominantly in real estate? The internet, right? The way you go about buying and selling homes is night and day difference than it once was. You used to walk, when I first got into this business in 1999, you would walk into the grocery store and you would get that little book that was on the shelf, the little magazine, and you would flip through, and there was one picture there with the price and a picture of the real estate agent saying, call me. That was marketing back then. But now I promise you that if you're in the market for buying and selling a home, you're on Zillow or Realtor.com, and you're looking at every single picture. You're pulling up Google Earth. You're pulling up the tax records. You know more about that house than the owner itself probably does, because you can get all of the information you need right on the internet.
Right.
And so the average consumer today spends 18 months looking at homes before they ever go out and see one. I'm going to say that again. This is a Zillow statistic, but the average consumer in Zillow is nothing more than a marketing company that tracks everybody's information. When everybody's on that website, they're tracking everything that you do. The average consumer spends 18 months looking at pictures of homes before they ever go out and buy one. So that being said, you know what's out there on the market. You know what you're getting into, and in fact, you know what prices are doing. When I'm talking to a new consumer or a home buyer, I should say, I said, let me ask you a question real quick. Which one of you, if there's two of them, I said, which one of you is on Zillow every night looking at homes and then texting the other one like 40 of them to look at the next day? And inevitably, one of them always points to the other and says, oh, that's her. Oh, no, that's him. So my point of saying all of this is you know what's out there on the market. Okay, you can get all the information for how big that backyard is. You can see if there's a fence. You can see what updates have been done. And you can even see what the other person that's selling at home paid for it a few years ago if you know where to go look. You don't have to go look at 20 homes before you find the right one. I tell everybody that I work with, if I have to show you more than 5 homes, I'm not doing my job. Because here's the thing, when you go out to eat, right? And I'm going to use an example here, but let's say you go out to eat and you order a steak medium with a side of curly fries, right? Well, you expect the waiter or waitress to bring you a steak medium with a side of curly fries.
Right. Not
a surf and turf with some Brussels sprouts, not whatever else. You expect it to be right the first time. That's the same thing with buying a house today. It's my job to help you sort through all of that information and take you right to the best homes first. My average client looks at 4 homes before we find the right one. Okay, and I'm not saying I won't show somebody more than 4 homes, but there's no reason to. If I'm showing you a bunch of stuff that doesn't fit your price or budget, if it's not what you want to look at, meaning it doesn't fit the stylistic characteristics of what you've told me is important, maybe open floor plan, et cetera, and it's not in the location you want, then why the hell are you working with me? Because I'm not doing my job, right? So again, going back to that professional etiquette of being a real estate professional, it's my job to listen to what's important to you, set expectations, and take you to the best stuff first. Again, that's why my average client looks at 4 homes before we find the right one. And sometimes it's the very first home that I show them is the one that they end up buying. And that's not bad because you already know what's out there on the market. You've been looking for a year and a half.
And back to the new real estate agent thing, early in my career, I had a couple. I just showed them everything, anything they wanted to see because I needed to get something going, right? Long story short, and if you're not familiar with Central Indiana, this won't mean anything to you, but you can always look on a map. But my office was in Plainfield. I showed houses all over Henderson County, Putnam County, Clay County, Park County.
That is a large geographic area.
Ended up buying, and this is over the course of 3 months, ended up buying a house in Clay City. Over the course of that time, we had looked at so many flecking houses together that their one little girl, JoJo, when we'd all get out of the car, she'd come running up and make me carry her all the way through the house. Little 4-year-old girl. Made her parents, after we closed, invite me to her birthday party.
That's awesome. I love that part of it. I don't love all the houses you had to show them, but I love that part of the story.
But my word, I mean, the miles we covered, right, to look at all these houses. So
no doubt.
A little too much, but I learned my lesson. So last question I want to cover here. Hang on, let me get a sip of water because, as Ryan said at the beginning, I do have a cold. Bill from Little Rock, Arkansas. Now, I don't know about you. I hear from Bill in Arkansas, and I got the voice in my head. Am I right?
You may as well go and use Bill's voice when you ask this question then.
All right, and Bill, if this is not the one I'm thinking of, then I apologize. But Bill writes, I keep hearing y'all say it's a seller's market. If that's true, do I really need a realtor?
That was pretty legit, actually.
He also goes on to say, 4 years ago, I picked other women over Hillary, and you should too. No, sorry. No, we're not doing politics.
Bill did not say that. That was kind of funny.
But didn't he? No, but yeah, so the question, is a seller's market, do I need a realtor?
I'll simply say no, you don't need a real estate agent all of the time, okay? If you've got the time to educate yourself on what goes into buying and selling a home, if you've got the time to educate yourself on what it takes to get this home in front of as many people as possible, which is the way to ensure you're going to get top value, right? You can't just put it in front of 5 people and hope that one of those 5 people wants to pay your price for it, right? The key to, the reason why we market homes is to create maximum exposure. When we create maximum exposure, the most number of people see it, which increases the probability of somebody wanting to buy it. And ideally, we create some competition, which drives the price up, right? So, no, you don't need a real estate agent to sell your home. But again, a real estate agent is going to help you out with way more than just putting a sign in the yard, putting it on the internet, and praying somebody else sells it, which is what a lot of real estate agents unfortunately do. But a good real estate agent is going to be able to help you maximize your exposure. He's going to help educate you on, okay, here's what this path consists of. Here's maybe some things that you need to be prepared for. Again, going back to setting expectations up front, right? He's going to maybe recommend that, hey, this happens all the time. In fact, this house I just put on the market this morning, same story. They had not been in their crawl space in years. Who thinks of getting in their crawl space, right? Well, so I unfortunately deal with a lot of crawl space issues. So I'm like,
this has been your year for crawl spaces.
Man, it sure has been. But nevertheless, I've got some good crawl space contractors at this point. If you need one, call me here in Indiana. But nevertheless, so I had them call two different crawl space contractors, and we unfortunately found out we had a little bit of a problem. Okay, but we were able to hedge that off first, before we had buyers come into the house. So that way, once a buyer does come in, they're not going to get scared away by some minor little problem, because we are able to address it head on going up front. So again, it's just, again, if you help somebody, if you help 100 people navigate the process of buying and selling a home, you're going to learn what to expect. You're going to learn how to convey that value to somebody else that's going through the process and help them do it better the next time. But if, you've educated yourself, you've taken the time to do that, and you know all the different ways to do this, yeah, sure, go ahead. It is a seller's market right now. But again, how many times have you done this?
Well, and one more thing for Bill. All right, so let's say you get an offer.
Mm-hmm.
Now
what happens next?
Right?
What happens next?
What do I do now?
What are your legal rights? Okay, and again, I hear this so
what are your
often.
legal rights? Not to interrupt, but what are your legal rights? But what are your legal obligations?
Absolutely.
What do you have to make sure you get done to protect yourself? I'm not just talking about now, but if you're on title for a house you're selling, to protect yourself 10 years from now.
No doubt.
And we won't get into all the. We need to have a title person on.
That's a good call. We should do that real soon.
Because there's a lot of stuff that you and I don't even deal with title, that's what their job is. But yeah, after you get an offer, then what the hell do you do?
I'm going to give you one example of exactly what you're referring to right there.
Bring it.
Because I just helped somebody buy a house, and we ended up buying a house that was listed for sale by owner. Well, we got to 3 days before closing, and I'm like, where are we at with getting the final numbers here? I'm like, everything's been done. This was relatively easy process. This dude forgot to order his mortgage payoff. Why? Because nobody told him he needed to.
Right.
So now we're delayed several days because he didn't order his mortgage payoff. Now my buyer's frustrated because they needed to be out of their house the day of the day we were scheduled to close on this thing, and now we're waiting because of a stupid, simple mistake that was just simply overlooked because this dude had never done it before. And again, I'm not going to blame him for that, but he then put my buyer in a very, very bad situation where they had to be out. They've got 2 little kids and 2 dogs, and they didn't have, they had to go rent a damn apartment. I'm sorry, not an apartment, but an extended stay hotel with 2 little kids and 2 dogs. So how do you think that leaves them feeling? It was a day and a half of them wanting to sue him and dealing with all of that, and him just being like, well, I wish somebody would have told me. And I'm like, well, I just wish you would have hired a real estate agent. But anyway.
Well, look, this has been a great time. And we've got other questions. We'll dig into them on another episode maybe, but I think we're about out of time. We should probably wrap up.
We've used a little time on this episode, but, again, this is stuff you and I are so passionate about, and, I love answering these questions. These are questions that I know I get asked almost every single day. So I know that, beyond the people that we've talked about on here that submitted these questions, there's got to be dozens of others that have the same questions out there. So again, I want to encourage you that, if you're listening to this, you have questions, please submit them. Greg and I are here to help. That's why we do this show, is really just provide some value and just make sure that we can convey what's really going on behind the curtain of real estate for everybody. So that way you can have a better experience and maybe use us to help you with that the next time you want to buy and sell one. So shameless plug right there.
So with that, I'm Greg Mayo.
And I'm Ryan Herget. If you took anything away from this, please be sure to hit that dinger bell, subscribe, rate, review, send us some more questions in. We'd love any feedback that you have. And again, for this episode, we appreciate your time today. Thanks.
Thanks, everybody.